My name is Michael O'Malley. I'm 29 years old, and for 7 years, I have served as a firefighter here in Chicago. I have always been a man who trusts what he can see and touch. The weight of a Halligan tool, the heat of a backdraft, and the solid ground beneath my boots. Faith was something I kept in the background, a tradition from my family, but not the engine of my life. My job teaches you that life is fragile and that reality is found in the work you do to save others. I never expected that my understanding of reality would be shattered by what happened just 8 days ago. On the afternoon of April 8th, 2026, we were called to a heavy timber warehouse fire on the south side. The smoke was a thick, oily black that blocked out the sun. I was inside with my partner, searching for a worker reported missing near the loading docks. We found him, a young man named Joshua, trapped under a fallen rack. We got him out, but as we turned to leave, the structure groaned with a sound like a mountain breaking. The floor beneath me didn't just crack, it vanished. I remember the sensation of falling into a pit of orange fire, the sudden snap of my lifeline, and then a silence so deep it felt like the world had stopped breathing. My heart stopped beating in that basement, and for several minutes, Michael O'Malley was dead. The transition from that terrifying, roaring heat to where I found myself next is something I still struggle to put into words. One moment I was gasping for air that was nothing but ash and poison, and the next, I was breathing the purest thing I have ever known. I wasn't in a building. I wasn't in Chicago. I was standing in a place that seemed to go on forever, filled with a golden, living light. It wasn't like sunlight that hits you from above. It was as if the light was coming out of everything, including me. The air was cool and smelled like the first morning of spring, before the city noise and the exhaust take over. I looked down at my hands, and they didn't have the soot or the scars from the fire. I felt whole in a way that I didn't even realize I was broken before. As I stood there, trying to make sense of the stillness, I noticed 4 massive archways. They stood in a perfect line across this golden horizon. They weren't made of brick or steel like the structures I'm used to. The first 3 were glowing with a brightness that almost felt like music. They were translucent, like fine crystal filled with liquid fire, pulsing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. But the 4th one stopped me cold. It was made of a heavy, jagged, dark stone. It didn't glow. It didn't pulse. It stood there like a wall of shadow against all that beauty. It felt heavy, like the air around it was thick with a coming storm. Then I felt him. Before I even turned around, I knew I wasn't alone. The presence was so strong it felt like a physical weight, but it wasn't a weight that crushed. It was a weight that settled me. I turned slowly, and there he was. I have seen many things as a firefighter, the worst of humanity and the most desperate moments of life, but nothing prepared me for the eyes of Jesus Christ. They were a deep, piercing brown, and when he looked at me, it was as if every secret I ever held, every time I had been selfish, and every time I had looked away from someone in need, was laid bare. I felt a sudden, sharp sting of honesty about myself. I wanted to hide. I felt so small and so unworthy to be standing in a place of such purity. I thought about all the Sundays I had skipped, and the times I had used his name without thinking. But as those feelings of shame rose up, he stepped closer. He didn't say a word at first, but he reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder. The moment his skin touched my turnout coat, which I realized I was no longer wearing, yet I felt more covered than ever, a wave of love crashed over me. It was like the feeling of being a child and having your father tell you everything is going to be okay after a nightmare, but 1,000 times stronger. It was a love that knew everything about me and still wanted me there. My knees gave out. I didn't fall because I was hurt. I fell because the sheer reality of him was too much for my spirit to take. I wept, not out of sadness, but because the relief of being known and loved was so overwhelming. I stayed there on my knees for what felt like a long time, just breathing in the peace that he radiated. When I finally looked up, he was smiling and he helped me to my feet. His strength was effortless. He began to move toward the archways, and I followed him, unable to take my eyes off the way the light seemed to move with him. He stopped before the first 3 archways, the ones that were shining like suns. He revealed to me that these represented the months we had just passed, January, February, and March. He showed me that the light within them was not just there by chance. It was the result of a great spiritual battle. He allowed me to see into the light of the first archway. January. I saw people I didn't know, an elderly woman named Margaret in a small apartment in Logan Square, a young father named Mateo praying over his sleeping children in a quiet house. I saw thousands of people like them on their knees. He revealed to me that the enemy had planned a great strike of sickness and fear for the beginning of the year, a shadow that was meant to sweep across the land and shut everything down again. But the light I saw was the collective breath of the faithful. Their prayers had gone up like a sweet smoke, forming a shield that the darkness could not penetrate. He showed me that heaven had moved because the people had asked. The victory was won in those quiet rooms where no one else was watching. We moved to the second archway, February. The light here was even more intense. He revealed that during this month, a great plot of violence had been brewing in the hearts of men who wanted to tear the country apart. I saw visions of cities on the brink of chaos, of fires that were meant to be lit but never were. He showed me that the intercession of the believers had stayed the hand of judgment. I saw groups of people meeting in basements and community centers, not to argue about politics, but to cry out for mercy. Because they chose to stand together, the Lord had sent his angels to guard the gates of the cities. The light was the evidence of his protection, a testament to what happens when his people humble themselves. Then we stood before the third archway, March. This light felt like a celebration. He revealed that in this month, the enemy had tried to poison the minds of the youth, to lead them into a deep pit of despair and self-destruction. I saw a vision of a young girl named Chloe who was standing on the edge of a dark choice. But then I saw a stranger stop to talk to her, moved by the Holy Spirit. I saw that thousands of these small acts of obedience had turned the tide. The light in March was the light of hope, returning to places where it had been extinguished. He showed me that the prayers of the saints had created a hedge around the next generation. But then the atmosphere changed. The warmth of the first three archways didn't reach the fourth one. Jesus turned his gaze toward that dark stone archway. The smile didn't leave his face, but his expression became very serious, filled with a weight that made me hold my breath. He revealed that this was April. He told me that while the first 3 months had been a season of hidden victories, April was the month of the shaking. He said that I was being shown this, not so that I would be afraid, but so that I would understand the necessity of what was coming. He told me that the comfort of the world had become a trap for many, and that the shaking was the only way to break the chains that were holding his people back from their true purpose. He took my hand again, and I felt his grip tighten. It was a steadying force, a reminder that no matter what I was about to see, he was the one holding me. We stepped toward the dark stone, and as we crossed the threshold, the golden landscape vanished. I felt a sudden drop in my spirit, like the feeling of the floor giving way in the warehouse. But this time it wasn't physical. We were entering into a vision of the immediate future, a time that was already beginning to unfold on the earth. As we stepped through that heavy stone archway, the warmth of the golden light didn't just fade. It was replaced by a cold, biting wind that smelled of ozone and damp pavement. It felt like the air in Chicago right before a massive lake-effect snowstorm, where the sky turns a bruised purple and everything goes unnaturally quiet. Jesus didn't let go of my hand. He led me forward into a vision that felt as real as the floor I had fallen through. I wasn't just watching a scene, I was standing in the middle of it. The first thing he revealed to me was a street in the heart of the loop. I saw a man named Liam, probably in his mid-30s, standing outside a glass-fronted bank. He was staring at his phone with a look of pure, hollow terror. I looked over his shoulder and I saw what he was seeing. The screen showed a message that his account was unavailable, and the numbers that represented his entire life's work, his mortgage payments, his kids' college fund, his security, were simply gone. He wasn't the only one. All around him, people were stopping in their tracks. I saw a woman named Sophia drop her coffee cup, the ceramic shattering on the sidewalk, as she realized her card wouldn't work to pay for the simple things she needed. Jesus turned to me, and his voice in my spirit was like a bell tolling in the fog. He revealed that on April 25th, 2026, the trust that holds the world together would be cut. He showed me that the wealth of men, which they had spent years building, was like a house made of sand. I saw the giant screens in the financial districts of the world flickering and going black. The numbers that people worshipped had no power when the system itself turned against them. He showed me that this was a deliberate shaking, meant to show everyone that the things they thought were solid were actually shadows. I saw people weeping on the steps of great buildings, realizing that the gold and the silver they had hoarded could not buy them a single moment of peace or a loaf of bread when the machines stopped working. Then the vision shifted. The city noise died down, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a grave. He showed me the great power grids of the country. I saw a man named Noah, a technician at a major hub, watching helplessly as his monitors began to fail. It wasn't a mechanical break. It was an attack from the dark places of the world. I saw the lights of Chicago go out in a wave, starting from the north side and sweeping down until the whole skyline was just a jagged black silhouette against the stars. He revealed to me that the internet, the thing people use to talk, to work, and to learn, would become a tool of the enemy or a desert of silence. I saw a mother named Isabella trying to call her husband, but the phone was dead. There was no signal. She looked out her window at the dark street, and I could feel the cold knot of fear tightening in her chest. Without the ability to hear news or talk to loved ones, the spirit of confusion began to hunt the people. Jesus showed me that when the screens go dark, the monsters in the hearts of men come out. I saw people wandering the streets, looking for information that wasn't there, their faces lit only by the fires starting in the distance. The Lord then took me to a grocery store on the edge of the city. It was a place I recognized, a place where people usually go about their business without a second thought. But in this vision of April, the shelves were picked clean. I saw an elderly man named Robert holding an empty carton of milk, his hands shaking. Behind him, a young man was trying to push past him to get to the last few cans of vegetables. There was a tension in the air that felt like a stretched wire ready to snap. I saw that the supply lines, the trucks that bring the food we eat every day, had stopped moving because the systems that told them where to go were broken. Jesus revealed that this was the digital winter. He showed me that people had become so dependent on the invisible signals in the air that they had forgotten how to survive on the earth. He showed me that the enemy was using this hunger and this darkness to prepare the way for a new solution. As we walked through the dark city, I saw a large building that looked like a community center, but it was glowing with a strange artificial light. People were lining up outside of it. I saw a woman named Emma, who looked exhausted and scared, walking toward the doors. Inside, there were people in sleek professional uniforms giving out food and water, but they were asking for something in return. They were telling the people that the old religions and the old ways of thinking were what caused this chaos. They were saying that for the world to be safe again, everyone had to agree to a new unity. He revealed to me that this was the great deception. He showed me that this new movement looked like an angel of mercy, but it was hollow. It promised food for the belly, but required the starvation of the soul. I saw people being asked to sign documents or accept digital marks that proved they were part of this new global family. I saw that those who refused, the ones who said that Jesus Christ was the only way, were being pushed to the side. They were called troublemakers and hate speakers. The Lord showed me a vision of a basement in a house I didn't recognize. There were 10 people huddled there, including a man named Oliver and a woman named Charlotte. They were praying by the light of a single candle. They were sharing a small bag of rice and a few bottles of water they had stored away weeks before. Even though the world outside was falling into an uproar, the peace in that room was like the peace I felt when I first met Jesus. He revealed to me that these were the prepared ones. They hadn't put their trust in the banks or the grid. They had put their trust in him, and they had found each other. He showed me that while the government was using technology to track everyone who went into the unity centers, these small groups of believers were invisible to the enemy's eyes because they were covered by the blood of the Lamb. I saw angels standing at the doors of that basement, guarding it from the chaos in the street. Jesus revealed that for every strike the enemy made, he had a plan to protect his own, but his own had to be ready to walk away from the comforts of the world. The vision grew more intense. I saw a man named Elijah being led away in handcuffs by men in black tactical gear. He wasn't being arrested for a crime. He was being taken because he refused to stop teaching his children about the Bible. I saw a look of absolute peace on his face, even as his neighbors watched and whispered that he was holding back progress. He revealed that in April, the law would become a weapon against the truth. I saw Bibles being collected and burned in the middle of public squares, while the new Unity books were handed out for free. I saw that the technology that was supposed to make our lives easier was now being used to listen to what was said in private homes. I saw a woman named Amelia whispering a prayer in her kitchen, only to have a light on her smart device turn red, signaling that she had violated the new peace codes. The level of surveillance was something I never thought possible in my country. It felt like a trap that had been set for years, and now in the darkness of April, the trap was being sprung. Jesus turned to me, his eyes reflecting the fires I saw in the distance. He revealed that the reason he was showing me this was to emphasize that the comfortable Christianity of the past was being burned away. He showed me that the church buildings, the big ones with the lights and the professional music, were many times the first ones to join the Unity movement because they wanted to keep their buildings and their status. But the true church, the one he called his bride, was retreating into the shadows, becoming more powerful than it had ever been because it was now pure. He showed me a vision of a young boy named William who was sick, and his parents, Lucas and Harper, didn't have access to the hospitals because they hadn't joined the Unity system. They laid hands on their son and prayed. I saw a golden light leave their hands and enter the boy, and he was healed instantly. Jesus revealed that in the times of great persecution, great miracles would return to the believers. He showed me that the less we had of the world, the more we would have of him. The visions through that dark stone archway didn't stop at the chaos in the streets. Jesus led me deeper into the heart of the month of April, showing me the spiritual condition of the people during the shaking. He showed me a vision of a great harvest field, but it wasn't filled with grain. It was filled with people. I saw a man named Samuel standing in a suburban neighborhood, looking at his beautifully manicured lawn. He had a nice house and a luxury car, and he felt secure. But when the wind of April began to blow, the wind of the financial collapse and the digital darkness, I saw that his roots did not go into the soil at all. His house began to tilt and his life began to unravel because he had built everything on the surface. Then Jesus showed me a woman named Sarah, who lived in a small, cramped apartment in a rougher part of the city. She had very little in the way of money, but as the wind blew, she didn't move. I saw that her roots went deep into the ground, wrapping around a foundation made of solid, glowing rock. Jesus revealed to me that Sarah was a woman of prayer. She had spent the quiet months of January and February preparing her spirit. When the darkness hit her neighborhood, she was the one who had a lamp lit. Neighbors began to knock on her door, not because she had a hoard of supplies, but because she had a peace that didn't make sense. He revealed that in April, the economy of the soul would be the only thing that mattered. He showed me another vision, one that felt very close to home for a firefighter. I saw a spiritual triage center. It looked like a field hospital in the middle of a war zone. I saw believers like a man named Thomas and a woman named Grace acting as medics. They weren't tending to physical wounds. They were tending to spirits that had been crushed by the loss of their earthly security. I saw people who had never prayed in their lives falling on their faces, begging for a reason to keep going. Jesus revealed that my job and the job of every believer who stood firm was to be ready for this triage. He showed me that we must have enough oil in our own lamps to help those whose lamps had gone out. He then allowed me to see the Unity movement again, but from a different angle. I saw a great hall where a leader was speaking. His words were smooth like honey, but I could see a dark mist coming out of his mouth. He was telling the crowd that the great shaking was a necessary clearing of the old, narrow-minded ways. I saw a man named David, a longtime churchgoer, sitting in the audience. He was nodding along because the leader was using words that sounded like the Bible, but were twisted just enough to remove the cross. Jesus revealed that the greatest danger in April wasn't the hunger or the lack of power. It was the seduction of a peace that didn't require repentance. He showed me that many would choose the easy path of the unity movement because they couldn't handle the weight of the dark archway. As the visions continued, I saw a network of underground streams. These weren't physical pipes, but connections between believers. I saw a woman named Patricia in a high-rise building and a man named James in a rural farmhouse. Even though the internet was down and the phones were silent, they were connected in the spirit. I saw them praying at the same time, moved by the same Holy Spirit to intercede for the same city. Jesus revealed that the enemy could cut the wires and silence the towers, but he could never stop the communication of the saints. He showed me that this invisible community would be the backbone of the survival of the faithful. They would share information through dreams, through sudden knowings, and through divine appointments on the street. The Lord then showed me the mark of the choice. I saw people standing in lines to receive a digital clearance on their handheld devices that would allow them to enter stores and buy food. This clearance was tied to an oath of allegiance to the unity movement. I saw a young mother named Elizabeth looking at her crying child, then looking at the line. The pressure was immense. But then I saw another woman, a stranger, walk up to her and hand her a bag of bread, whispering, "Trust in the Lord, do not take the oath." Jesus revealed that the miracles of provision would be common for those who refused to bow. He showed me that he would multiply the little that his people had, just as he did with the loaves and the fishes, but only for those who stood on their testimony. I saw a vision of the sky over Chicago. It looked different. There was a thinness to the veil between the world and the spiritual realm. I saw angels descending in the middle of the riots, placing invisible seals on the foreheads of those who were mourning for the sins of the land. These people were kept in a bubble of calm even when the world around them was in an uproar. Jesus revealed that his protection was not a promise that we would never face trouble, but a promise that the trouble would not consume us. He showed me that in the darkest night of April, his glory would be most visible on the faces of his children. Finally, he showed me a vision of myself. I was back in the fire station, but I wasn't just checking the trucks. I was talking to my crew. I saw myself standing in the bay, telling them about the 4 archways. Some were laughing, but others had tears in their eyes. I saw that my words were like seeds being planted in a field right before a heavy rain. Jesus revealed that this was my mission. I was to be a voice crying out in the city of wind, telling people that the storm was not an accident, but a call to come home. He showed me that every person I told was a life that could be saved from the spiritual fire that was coming. The vision of April began to pull back, like a camera zooming out. I saw the dark stone archway one last time, and I realized it wasn't a tomb. It was a tunnel. On the other side of the month of April, I saw a light that was even brighter than the first 3 months. It was a light of a purified, powerful church that no longer relied on buildings or money, but only on the power of God. Jesus took my hands and looked into my soul with a love that felt like a permanent seal. He revealed that the time was short and that I had to go back. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in that peace forever. But he told me that there were people who would only hear the truth if I was the one to tell them. The transition back was violent. I felt the sudden crushing weight of gravity. I felt the cold air of the hospital room and the sharp burning pain in my chest where the paramedics had worked to bring me back. The golden landscape was gone, replaced by the white tiles of the ceiling and the smell of antiseptic. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and raw. All I could think about were the names: Liam, Sophia, Noah, Samuel, Sarah. I knew they were real. I knew the date was real. I knew the Lord was real. I have spent every waking hour since then trying to process the magnitude of what I saw. My fellow firefighters have noticed the change in me. I'm not the same Michael O'Malley who went into that warehouse on April 8th. I am a man who has seen the future, and it is a heavy thing to carry. I have started reaching out to the churches in my neighborhood, telling the pastors that they need to stop the entertainment and start the preparation. I have been buying extra supplies, not out of fear, but out of a desire to be like Sarah, someone who can help her neighbors when the shaking begins. I have been on my knees more in the last 8 days than I have in the last 29 years. I woke up here in the hospital today, April 16th, surrounded by machines and doctors who are calling me a miracle. My chest is sore and my body is tired, but my spirit is on fire. April 25th is only days away. I saw the dark archway and I saw the shaking that is coming. Please listen to what I am saying. Seek the Lord now while there is still a moment of quiet. Build your faith, find your community, and do not be caught sleeping when the door opens. The shaking of April is coming, but for those who know him, the light will still shine.